Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by the Partnership for Student Success on out-of-school time programs as a key bridge between school, home, and community. This webinar is the second in a series of webinars from the Partnership for Student Success focused on presenting recent, timely, and relevant research on evidence-based and people-powered K-12 student supports, sharing this with practitioners from schools, districts, and youth-serving nonprofit organizations, and providing examples of how this research can manifest in practice. Based at the Everyone Graduate Center at Johns Hopkins University, the Partnership for Student Success is a national coalition of school districts, nonprofit organizations, and higher education institutions working to expand evidence-based and people-powered supports for K-12 students in communities nationwide. We focus particularly on 5 student support roles that have substantial evidence on effectiveness on a range of student outcomes: tutoring, mentoring, student success coaching, post-secondary transition coaching, and wraparound or integrated student supports. All of these supports we know can and do take place during the school day and during out-of-school time. We provide technical assistance, we operate working groups, learning communities, and other opportunities for practitioners to collaborate around shared challenges and solutions to those challenges. And we also conduct research and disseminate information about research-based strategies for implementation. At the end, we'll share a little bit more about how to get involved if you're interested beyond this webinar. So after-school programs and summer programs, often referred collectively as out-of-school time or OST programs, have long provided crucial supports for children, youth, families, communities during times when school is not traditionally in session. There's a large body of research indicating the positive impact of quality out-of-school time programs on a range of student and community outcomes, from academic performance to graduation rates, student well-being and belonging, and more. These effects can have positive results not only on students in their lives outside of school, but also on their performance in school. And they can also have a positive impact on school communities and communities at large. So today you'll hear from researchers about some recent research that has come out on high-quality out-of-school time programs grounded in positive youth development and ways in which these programs can positively impact school day and community outcomes. You'll also hear about how these positive impacts can manifest in practice from the Louisiana Center for Afterschool Learning, which supports out-of-school organizations statewide in Louisiana, as well from a school-based practitioner on the impacts of a 21st Century Community Learning Challenge program on children and youth in rural East Feliciana Parish School District in Louisiana. We have a really great lineup of speakers today, each of whom bring experience and expertise on quality out-of-school time programming. First, you'll hear about their work through a panel discussion, and then that will be followed by a Q&A. I really encourage you throughout the panel discussion to add questions to the Q&A function in this webinar. And if Dorothy, I'm not actually, oh no, the Q&A is here. Sorry, working with the new computer, it's here. Add things to the Q&A function, and we will get to them either in writing or at the end after the panel. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce today's panelists. So first, I'd like to introduce Andrew Ganucheau, who is Director of Out-of-School Time Quality at the Louisiana Center for Afterschool Learning. Next, I'd like to introduce Susanna Loeb, who is Director of the National Student Support Accelerator at Stanford University. Next, Jen Rinehart, Senior Vice President of Strategy and Programs at Afterschool Alliance. Next, Dr. Tongia Sanders, 21st Century Community Learning Challenges Executive Director from East Feliciana Parish School District in Louisiana. And last but not least, Dr. Sandy Simpkins, Director of the Center for Afterschool and Summer Excellence and a professor at the UC Irvine School of Education. And the panel will be moderated by my colleague, Partnership for Student Success Director of Corporate, State, and Local Partnerships, Dorothy Jones. Over to you, Dorothy.
Thanks so much, Kate, and thanks everyone for being here today. We're very excited for the conversation and a lot we want to cover in a short amount of time. So we're going to do a question as a part of an intro. And so we'll just kind of go around and do the introductions and the question this way. So Each of you are engaged in the field of youth development or out of school time through your research or supportive programs, providing direct services. In 1 minute or less, if you could tell us who you are and your connection to this work. And Andrew, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Andrew Ganucheau, the Director of OST Quality at the Louisiana Afterschool Network. The big focus we have on this work is getting programs to understand what the research has said all along about an after-school program. The number one benefit an after-school program provides to a school is improving school day attendance. You might see some improvement in academics and behavioral, but the number one thing consistently we have seen is it improves school day attendance. And we work with programs on that data point and really getting more superintendents, more school districts to understand what is the true role of a quality after school program.
Wonderful, thank you. Susanna, can you go next?
Good afternoon. I'm Susanna Loeb. I'm a professor at Stanford where I run something called the SCALE Initiative, where my team and I study how to improve education systems and how to effectively scale the most promising practices for the benefit of students. My focus recently has been a lot on high-impact tutoring and on the use of AI to improve student experiences and outcomes. In this work, I focus both on in-school and out-of-school time supports. I think I bring to this group today a link to the U.S. public school systems, where most of the students in out-of-school time programs spend a good part of their week, and also an understanding of evaluation, and particularly experimental and non-experimental or quasi-experimental methods for estimating the effects of programs on student development. So very much from the research side. Thanks for having me here today.
Thanks, Susanna. Jen, let's go over to you.
Sorry, I took my finger off the button there for a second. Wasn't ready to unmute. I'm Jen Rinehart. I'm here representing the Afterschool Alliance. We are a public policy and advocacy organization that's really focused on increasing access to quality after school and summer programs. And one of our kind of main categories of work is on the research side of things. And we have a new issue brief that our research team put together that really highlights the role of after school in supporting student engagement and school attendance. And so I'm going to share some more about that.
Great. Dr. Sanders.
Hi, I'm Tongia Sanders. I am the director of the 21st Century After School program here in East Feliciana Parish in Clinton, Louisiana. It's a very small rural district. I'm kind of like the person who is at the forefront of after school for the district. My main focus here is to just shed some light on how after school programs have actually helped our district in so many ways. By us being a rural district, we have had increased student activity in our after school programs. We've noticed that absenteeism has decreased since we've had this program, and all of our scores have increased by having these after school programs. So I want to share more about how we were able to, lead the state actually in getting these initiatives done through the 21st Century program.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Sanders. And Dr. Simpkins.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me today. So my name is Professor Sandy Simpkins. I'm at the University of California at Irvine, and I run a center for after school and summer excellence. And I used to work at an after school activity. I work with a lot of local programs now and our state level after school office. But I've been studying after school activities for over 25 years, a while. I study how kids spend their time from kindergarten through 12th grade, what predicts whether they're going to an organized activity or doing other things after school, what is a high quality activity, so what are the indicators of that, and also the outcomes associated with participating. And one of the other things that we do in addition to this research is we have a certificate program for our undergraduates to learn about and get trained on organized after school activities. And then they work with local programs in the area. So it's great to be here.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's dive into kind of the first research report we want to talk about today. So Susanna and Sandy, earlier this year, you were part of the expert committee that helped publish a report from the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine on the future of youth development. And then this was an update to the 2002 community programs to promote youth development report, often referred to as the Blue Book. Can you tell us about the report and what your findings indicate about the impact of OST programs for children and youth today?
Yeah, thank you, Dorothy. So Susanna and I are going to tag team a little bit in this part of the presentation. There's a code there that you can scan to download the report. It's free. There's executive summaries and there's the entire volume, either one. If we can go to the next slide. There's a wealth of information in this report. So take it in bits. We talk about theories on after-school activities, thinking about activities within systems like school systems, community systems, looking at Chapter 4 programs, what's out there, thinking about the range of programs and what are youth participating in, what are the barriers that they experience to their participation. In Chapter 5, we talk about the workforce, and in Chapter 6, we talk about implementation, talking about the quality of experiences youth have in organized activities and program quality. In 7, which is where Susanna and I are going to focus on today, we're going to talk about more the effectiveness and the outcomes associated with program participation. We also have, and Jen, I know Jen Rinehart worked a lot on this chapter, talking about funding and the policies on after-school activities. And then we have several recommendations. Next slide. So like I said, we are focusing, just Susanna and I are giving you a tiny little bit of what's in this report. It's really a quick snippet about outcomes. And so we're just going to highlight a few of the pieces and some of the challenges that I think we need to address moving forward, or that the committee thought moving forward. And so I wanted to highlight a few of the take-home messages up front. One of the things that we did a whole review, huge review of the literature on what are the outcomes associated with participating in activities. And we looked at a range of social, emotional, academic, physical outcomes, mental health, problem behavior, a variety of things. 2 take-home messages that I wanted to underscore is that, one, it seemed like we were more likely to find a connection between participating in an activity and youth adjustment when the activity intentionally focuses on that outcome. And I know this may seem intuitive, but a lot of times people study participation in any type of program and a whole range of outcomes. So when the activity, say, targets civic engagement, we were more likely to see correlates to youth civic engagement, when they were an adult. The second piece to consider is quality, that when we saw outcomes, we were more likely to see them when it was a high quality activity. Unfortunately, a lot of reports actually don't address quality of the activity. So that's something for all of us to improve on moving forward. Next slide. Another thing, again, is that I think moving forward, we need to look, not ask the questions, do activities matter? I think we wouldn't ask that for schools. Like, do schools matter? It's rather which features, which experiences, in which activities for which kids. And so a lot of times we look at just the time in activities, but we really need to think about what are they doing in these activities? What skills should they be developing? And then what outcomes will we see later on? And in the report, Susanna mentioned some of the methods in her introduction. We did use a variety of methods, and we learned different information from each of those, from experimental methods, from qualitative methods. And so we found it very useful to use all different types of methods moving forward. Next slide. So that was like some of the general take-home messages across all the various outcomes. I just wanted to touch real briefly on the social emotional outcomes, things like work habits, civic activities, developing a sense of responsibility. We generally did find evidence, although most of it was not experimental evidence, linking participation, organized activities to a range of social and emotional outcomes. Again, we're more likely to see those when it was high quality, when the activity intentionally targeted these types of skills, those kinds of things. And then I'm going to pass it off to Susanna to talk about academics.
Okay. So just to follow up on Sandy's points about the benefits and looking at these outcomes from out of school time for students, I just want to note that academic achievement is particularly difficult to move Rarely do we see studies that show significant positive effects of out-of-school time program on student performance on standardized tests. And I just wanted to say that shouldn't really surprise us. Schools devote most of their time to academic learning. So to move test scores on top of the work that schools do, you usually need very academic, high dosage supports that look and feel a lot like school, aligned instruction, well-trained educators, frequent contact, clear goals. Think of something like intensive, high-impact tutoring. The research shows this. Programs can have effects. There's a nice 2013 evaluation of higher achievement out of a school time program where Herrera and colleagues found a really strong positive effect on achievement for a program that included a long duration of high dosage instruction. At the same time, most other research on a range of programs shows really no clear effects on achievement. And there are technical reasons why this might be the case, why we don't see effects like tests aggregate across many domains. And if the program targets a narrow skill set, that won't show up on the test, or tests are least precise for students who are far below or above grade level. Exactly where many of the youth in out of school time programs are. So it could be a measurement issue, but overall test scores are just really hard to move. But what do we do with this lack of effect? I think isn't just saying, well, then it doesn't matter, because I think there are two implications. And the first is that if you do really want to move test scores, you can, but you have to focus on that. Like this isn't something, and this is very much what Sandy was saying too, this isn't something that just comes along because there's someone there to help students with their homework when they come with questions. You really have to have a clear focus on it if you're going to have an effect. Second, and I think this is really important, is if a program doesn't move test scores, it doesn't mean it's ineffective. Studies show benefit for other outcomes such as school attendance, as Andrew was saying, and engagement and social emotional skills. Out of school time programs often foster interest and engagement and set students up for longer term success, even when they don't affect test scores. And so that brings me to my second point, which is on one more slide, which is that all students really have out of school time. This isn't something that some students have and some students don't. What varies is really the quality and the focus of those experiences. In the report that Sandy was talking about, we define out of school time programs as being supervised, enriching environments that students attend regularly after the school days end. But we also point out that there is an access problem. Not all students can easily get into quality programs because of insufficient seats. There aren't quality programs available to them. There could be an instability of offerings, so they can't plan because they don't know what programs are going to be offered. There could be information frictions where kids just don't know about programs that are there. And then there could be transportation problems. So these are very practical things that determine whether a young person can turn these free hours, these out of school time hours that they all have, into growth hours that lead to these beneficial outcomes. So the policy and practice question isn't whether students should have out of school time. The question is how we improve the quality of that and ensure access to the programs that will benefit each of the students most. And for some students related to this academic outcome, that what they need is academically intensive tutoring designed to move their achievement scores. But for others, and actually for most, it's engagement rich programming that builds persistence and belonging and purpose, even if standardized test score gains are muted. So those are the 2 points that I want to make here.
Yeah, and so on the next slide, how do you do that? Hey, that all sounds great. How do you do this? Because it's hard work. And so the committee underscored that every child should be able to participate in a high quality program. And so we need several different things to come together for that to happen. And so we need coordination across programs and intermediaries. You all probably know after school, it's wonderful in that it's a a varied landscape because, like Susanna talked about, kids are interested in different things. But it also makes it challenging and it's not very centralized. So can it coordinate? Can the after school coordinate with the school? Are they part of a large national organization? Can they coordinate at the state level? So how to coordinate, really looking at those intermediaries and coordination across programs. Increasing access is key, but just not access to any program, a high quality program that will excite the kids to go and to keep going. You know, they vote with their feet. And so we need to make it exciting to keep them coming back and to keep them growing and developing. Quality is key. We both talked about that. And then one of the major concerns is consistent funding. And many more states are providing state level funding, but it's not every state at this time. So looking for that funding. And then a lot of what we're talking about when we're talking about quality, when we're talking about positive youth experience, a lot of that comes down to the youth staff relationships and those staff that are there. So really working on some workforce issues in terms of training the workforce, benefits and all these other kinds of things that need to be addressed at multiple levels. So I think we'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Let's shift over to the After School Alliance program. So, Jen, I'm going to bring you up. Awesome. Jen, you too were a part of the committee with Susanna and Sandy and are very well versed in the work. So the After School Alliance has also recently released a report about the impact of OST programs that they have on school day engagement and improving attendance. Can you share a little bit about what you've seen in this area specifically?
Yeah, happy to. Glad to be here. And I appreciate Susanna and Sandy really giving that overview of the National Academy's report. It was a great project to work on, and it's a terrific resource for the field. So I hope folks will check that out for sure. You can go ahead and skip to the next slide. That's the QR code. I'll just say that quickly, the QR code to download the issue brief. And I know it'll also be posted in the chat. And I already kind of addressed who the After School Alliance is on my first intro, so we can skip this one too. And we can just dig right into kind of the specifics of what I'm here to share with you all. So as I mentioned, research is part of the work that we do to grow access to quality after school opportunities. And this is one of our more recent products, which is an issue brief that really makes this connection between building school day engagement and improving attendance. It has a section that really outlines the problem of chronic absenteeism. It highlights several studies that show how after-school programs are improving attendance. And then it spotlights 5 different programs within the brief and then in their own separate standalone spotlights, and make some recommendations for the field. So I'll just walk through a couple components of the brief. I know we have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to be quick here. But this is a quick snapshot of the chronic absenteeism data that we share in the brief. And what you can see here, kind of big picture, and I think most of us are aware of this if we've been following the issue of chronic absenteeism at all, is that the levels of chronic absenteeism are better than they were in the early days of the pandemic, but they are still worse than they were pre-pandemic, right? So we've got a lot of districts still experiencing at least modest levels of chronic absenteeism. We have a lot of kids who are still chronically absent. And we know the root causes really that contribute to chronic absenteeism. We know there is no one cause for chronic absenteeism, and most of the time, the causes really intersect with each other. But overall, the causes are really around barriers, right? Like the reasons why students can't go to school, aversion, the reasons why students won't go to school, disengagement, which is that issue around kind of lack of enjoyment or lack of a connection to school itself. And then the misconceptions maybe about the actual impact of absences, where folks underestimate how important school day attendance is. And we also know that historically marginalized students, students of color, low-income students, students with disabilities, that all of those groups are more likely to experience some of these root causes and then also more likely to be chronically absent. So on the next slide, we can shift to the good news, which really is something that several folks have already touched on, the fact that research consistently shows linkages between after-school program participation and improving school day attendance. And here I'm just highlighting a couple of the studies quickly that show up in the issue brief. These are largely around the 21st Century Community Learning Center funded programs. So that's the only federal funding stream that supports after school and summer all across the country. It's managed at the state level by state education agencies, and then grants go to local communities and school and community partnerships to implement after school and summer programs. And there's a national evaluation that really highlights the fact that 60% of chronically absent students who participated in an after school program improved their attendance after participating. And then there are state level evaluations as well, like the ones you see here from North Dakota and from California. And these in particular really highlight the positive relationship between after school participation and young people from marginalized and underserved communities. So in North Dakota, the data really lift up Native American and low income students who both benefit after participating in after school programs and show gains in their school day attendance. And in California, similarly, we see good outcomes for young people who are English language learners after participation in their after school program. And then, yes, this next slide, we see some of the ways in which after school programs are really helping with this increase in school attendance. So things like promoting school connectedness, where we have data from the 21st Century programs in Delaware, where young people report feeling more connected to their school after participating in their after school program. Findings around school engagement, where in Montana, young people's teachers reported greater school engagement after K through fifth graders were participating in after school. And then feelings around safety, right? Where the young people, and again in Montana, who participated in programs said that they felt physically and emotionally safe in their programs. They felt supported by staff, and they felt connected to their peers. And all of that helps contribute then to their care, that carries over in many of these instances then to their school experiences, since oftentimes the same staff and the same young people that are in their after school program also are part of their school community. These are kind of three organizing principles from our issue brief, where we highlight programs that really embrace these different qualities and approaches to helping ultimately to support school attendance. All of the 5 programs that we highlight in the brief can speak to all 3 of these qualities, but I'm just going to briefly touch on 3 of the programs, and 1 for kind of each of these qualities. So on the next slide, yep, you can see the Jamestown Community Center in San Francisco is really most closely aligned with providing opportunities for youth to explore their interests. This is also one that has a lot of strong school community partnerships where they really work to align their activities with the school day. And they also have strong partnerships with school day teachers, where staff in the after school program actually shadow the school day teachers. And then they've got great outcomes as well. And then the next one you can see is a program from Washington, D.C., Critical Exposure, which really works with children in the city to help them drive change in the city of Washington, D.C. through photography. And so the kids take photos and use those photos and images to help advocate for changes that they want to see in their own community. It's a great way to really uplift youth voice within the program and more broadly. And young people have some good results there in terms of saying that they feel like their voice matters and that they're contributing to something bigger overall. And then the last one I'll share is the one from San Diego, California, which is Reality Changers, which is really focused on kind of these more one-to-one or small group mentorship experiences that really help high school youth, not just in high school, but also through college and even beyond. And they have some great outcomes around young people being more likely to complete college than their peers who are not participating in the program. So that's a quick snapshot of what you'll see in the brief. There's a lot more detail there, and the snapshots are really great too. So check that all out.
Thank you, Jen. Really appreciate you sharing this information, and I hope folks have some time to review a little bit later. Let's dive a little deeper now. I'm going to bring in Andrew and Dr. Sanders. and look at this a little more locally. So Louisiana, you've seen some extraordinary improvements for students tied to OST program participation. A 2023 report by the U.S. Department of Education on 21st Century Community Learning Centers programs nationally indicated that Louisiana students attending after-school programs saw both academic and behavioral improvements in school. Specifically, 85% of students participating in 21st Century Community Learning Centers with an attendance rate below 90% the previous year improved their school day attendance. Andrew, can you share more about what you're seeing in Louisiana and how OST programs are keeping students engaged in learning at school and beyond?
Well, thank you for having me here, Dorothy, and thank you also to being part of this amazing panel. A lot of it kind of underscores some of the research that we heard from Sandy and Susanna earlier, particularly about what a quality after-school program is. I am now 11 years with the network as director of OST quality, and when I first got here, there was a big discussion about what is quality? What does quality mean? It kind of goes back to the basis of the 21st Century Learning Grant. If you look at it with the 50 state network being established, before the 21st Century Grant was established, then Governor Richard Riley and Terry Peterson reached out to the Mott Foundation to see if they could establish networks of quality. And we are one of those networks of quality. Now, what do we mean by quality? In Louisiana, we call it the 3Ds: data, driving, direction, meaning the program's going to have data. They're going to look at that data and then shape that data by driving it in their programming. And then you take a look at the data to see, are you headed in the right direction? It's kind of tough sometimes because a lot of grants can be compliance driven. So it's just, did you hit the mark? But we're more after quality, data driving direction. And this really, and then we also drove home, what is the structure of an after school program? And really driving home to these programs, it can't be all about tutoring and homework assistance. Many parents want that. They need help desperately with homework assistance, but if you make the majority of your program homework assistance, you're going to see attendance fall off in the transition from elementary to middle school. So we try to make sure programs understand that you can have about 30 to 45 minutes of homework assistance, but you need to have time for some physical activity, time for a healthy snack, time for socialization, and most important, time for a high quality experiential learning opportunity. Also, a lot of credit goes to Department of Education. They recently established an education liaison position, and this person basically works with the school day to see how those experiential learning opportunities can tie in and enhance the school day work, because that's really what we're after. If a child's going to leave the building with a smile on their face, they're more likely to return to the building with a smile on their face. If they're leaving the building with a frown on their face, you have a potential dropout on your hand. And that's what we're really looking at with these programs. The final aspect that I'd like to kind of provide as a segue to this, a big part of this also is the experiential learning opportunities that high quality OST STEM provides. When I moved up here to North Louisiana, I would talk to some of the superintendents and they would tell me, we're not ready for STEM. And we're like, okay, well, I get the M in math is for, we need to focus on reading and math, they would say. But we really started incorporating the after school programs. And as Dr. Sanders will tell you with East Feliciana Schools, if she opens up a robotics, a aquaponics, a Lego program, within 24 hours, that program will be filled to capacity. And we're seeing the demand for STEM in rural parishes unlike any other. And that's the big difference as well when it comes to chronic absenteeism. It's a lot different in rural parishes than it is in urban parishes. They're dealing with 4-day school weeks. They're dealing with transportation issues. And I think Dr. Sanders, I'll throw it over to her to kind of shed some more light on the rural parish perspective that we also need to keep in mind when dealing with chronic absenteeism.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to join the panel today. I'm so excited to be on here to share about East Feliciana and our after-school program. As Andrew has already stated, like rural districts like ours, after-school programs are a must. We must have an after-school program because students usually are not, we don't have much to engage in really in the rural area. So they're allowed to come to the after-school program and engage with their peers. And one of the things that I know that contribute to the success of our after-school program is directly collaborating with the school principals and the daytime teachers, which are also our employees for after school. So my background, I come from an educational background. Before taking this position, I was an assistant principal at a school that now has an after school program. So I was able to see like all the needs of the students and what they needed during the school day that would help them in after school. So when I took this position, I was able to actually develop some programs that the students would love to do academically as well as socially. One of our things that we have started now to like combat the absenteeism crisis that we have started in like a truancy academy. It's called, where we're not going to call it truancy academy, we're just going to call it a communication academic hub, where we're going to send those students who are like chronically absent, to that academy, and they'll be able to receive their time that they missed in school as well as enrichment time. And another thing that we're doing now, our summer program has been a huge success. We used to invite just our district, but we also incorporated other districts to come partake of the summer program. We serve over 700 students in the small areas that we have, but mainly we've seen a lot of increase in test scores due to the summer program and the after school program. It came after years of having the program. It started during COVID time, and we really needed a connection to make sure that students got what they needed, what they missed during the COVID time. But as we saw the years progress, we saw our scores increase. We went from like a D district to now we're a B district, and we contribute that to after school because students are staying every day for 2 hours, 1 hour enrichment, 1 hour of academics, and students are rewarded, as I've heard in the research that some of you had up, that you have to have teachers and people there for the students to engage in, that they would want to stay. You can't just make it all about academics. You need to get the whole child involved, as well as, academics, emotional, social and emotional, careers. And we had all of that embedded into our program. And as Andrew had mentioned about the STEAM Academy, that's where I'm located. We opened a STEAM Academy 3 years ago, and we noticed that students are just like, they love STEAM. They love hands-on activities. I was evaluated 1 year by the Weichert Center, and they noticed that we needed more student choice. So I decided to do a survey to determine what activities the students should engage in for after school. And all of them wanted like robotics, they wanted culinary. We offered that. We went from 31 students and we ended up having 85 students to enroll. So I know the offerings has a lot to do with it. The educational liaison, I'm also that. By being a small district, I do major roles, a lot of major roles. I'm over the after school program and the educational liaison, which is good because I can connect to the teachers. I know most of the teachers, who I've been in the community for about 25 years at least. And so that was a big help to get those teachers engaged, but most of all, make sure the students have a voice. And I know that it has a lot to do with our success in after school.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And as we heard earlier, students vote with their feet, and it sounds like they're voting to say that they're loving what you're doing. So I'm going to bring everybody back on now. Just a reminder that if you have questions, we are using that Q&A function. We do have one that's in there that I'm going to ask, but I also want to invite you all to ask more questions. The question that I see is going back to the research findings from earlier. Curious which of these findings apply to OST programs during the summer versus during the school year. Is there a distinction there?
I know for the National Academies report, we were more focused on during the school year. There's a separate report from the National Academies that did focus on summer. I think it was published just a few years prior 2 R's. And so ours is more focused on, like Susanna said, it's general after school program that happens during the year, not tutoring programs, not lessons. It would include things like 21st century programs where kids come do a variety of activities, and they're usually there Monday through Friday. We also included extracurricular activities that are typically more focused on a specific topic and meet less frequently. So that was sort of what we covered.
Thank you. Another question for Jen. We heard today that funding can be a challenge for OST programs. Can you speak to the current landscape of OST funding and what folks in the room should be considering as they plan for the future?
Yeah, sure. Also, I'll just put a plug that there is, Sandy mentioned this, there is a whole chapter of the book that focuses on kind of the policy and funding landscape. But for a more recent update from what's in the book, right now, Congress is working on the next, well, the current fiscal year, which will end here at the end of the month, funding for next fiscal year. And we are likely to be in what's called a continuing resolution because Congress isn't likely to make that decision by the end of this month. But so as of right now, 21st Century Community Learning Centers, which I mentioned, the only federal funding stream, Andrew and Dr. Sanders both talked about how that's being implemented in Louisiana. That is currently funded at about $1.3 billion, which is roughly even with what it's been for several years now. There was a little bit of a scare. Actually, there was a big scare this summer when funding was withheld for a few weeks in July that was supposed to flow to states and then to communities on July 1st. But luckily, many programs, providers, parents, policymakers spoke out against that, and those funds were released. And now we're just focused on the next year of funding and making sure that we don't see any cuts to 21st century going forward. And this came up before too, but there are a number of states that have started some investments in after school and summer programs. And we have a fact sheet highlighting that. And I'll see if I can grab the link to that and I'll pop it in the chat too for people who want to learn more about that.
And if I could add, there's also municipalities that have started up programs in Hammond, Louisiana. The city of Hammond decided to make a small adjustment to the millage and property tax, and they funded an after-school program. But I do also want to stress this. The way I know it works in Louisiana is they receive sort of seed funding for their 21st century program, but they're supposed to operate as a community organization and fundraise to enhance the other aspects of their programs like STEM and so on. Like Dr. Sanders will tell you, she has a great partnership with Walmart. And so the 21st century funding only acts as a seed funding, and the whole idea is that there's some sort of structure in place to grow the program and enhance it. So they deal with funding issues just like regular programs as well.
I just had one other thought on funding, which I just feel like is so important for us to think about, is just how difficult funding is for out-of-school time programs. It was one of the kind of shocking things for me is how much effort is put in by each of the programs to raise money for their own program, and that most of the dollars come year by year. It's just such a unnecessarily complex bureaucratic system. And I think as a community, that's just something that we should be thinking about trying to fix.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it affects a lot of us, right? Parents especially, work until 5, working later, and after school programs are a necessity. They're not necessarily an option. Well, thank you so much. We're going to do one more question, and this is going to be a lightning round so we can keep on time. Question being, in 1 minute or less, what is one piece of advice that you have for people in this room working to implement, expand, or improve out-of-school time programs in their community? And I'm going to kind of go in order of our presentation. So, Sandy, I'm going to you first.
So I have lots of advice on research, but I think actually the bottom line is improving kids' lives. So for me, the one thing that I would say is high quality. So like when Dr. Sanders was talking about youth voice, that's one of the indicators we talk about in the report about quality. So I think knowing your audience, both the parent and the child audience, and then giving them things that get them excited. And it doesn't have to be about academics. Like if they are motivated about something and like feel good about themselves, that will actually help them in school. And so, thinking broadly about the whole child and everything in terms of quality.
Thank you. Susanna?
And I would put quality first too, but next to quality, I'd put coordination, that there's just barriers to kids getting access and students getting access to out of school time. That is in part because we don't have slots, but in part because it's so confusing. And if we can kind of come together again to make it less confusing for students and their families to choose programs and to know what their options are, I think that could be a big step forward.
Thank you. Jen?
Yeah, I think one of the things I would focus on is sort of urging folks to get connected with the others in the after school community. So if you're not already, part of your statewide after school network of programs where you're going to get the latest news and updates about what's happening in your state and have opportunities to meet in person with other folks who are doing similar work in communities. If you're not already part of our network, so that you get the policy updates, when there might be a threat to funding opportunities, when new funding opportunities arise, like lean on other people a little bit, because it is a lot of work to manage an after school program. And so don't try and track down all that stuff yourself when there are other folks out here who literally make it our jobs to track that stuff down for you. So make sure you're connecting with folks like that.
Thank you, Jen. Andrew?
I second everything that's been said, with your after school network, but what in the quality aspect, but what I really want to highlight is on the funding discussion we just have. And the big thing we emphasize with our programs is it's about resources. That can be financial resources, but the key point I'm trying to make here is in today's world of community engagement and corporate engagement, you don't lead with the ask for funding. You try to develop a resource, you try to develop a relationship and see if there are resources that they can provide. A lot of times, if you're trying to work with the local hospital in your county or parish, you go and develop that, see if they can provide some resources to enhance an event or so on, but you don't lead with the ask and think about how you can have these community organizations support your program through resources and volunteer hours. And then when the volunteer from the corporation participates in the program, that's when they see the magic and that's when they make the financial gift. But do not lead with the financial. Look at fundraising and community organizations through resource enhancement.
Thank you, Andrew. Dr. Sanders?
I would say start looking around in your community to see what after school programs are offered. Start with the Department of Education. They usually have a list of everybody who's offering an after school program and the proximity of that after school program. And most of all, reach out to our Louisiana, our locale, Andrew. He can direct us to anything that we need. I can say he's been a very like a rock for us. He's been directing us to different things that we need for after school. Also reach out to the parents. I've been reaching out to our parents. Some of them work for those corporations that can support your after school program. I had several parents who work for Exxon, Dow, different places like that, and they were able to help, get supplies and different things for the after school program. So even though you may not have one in your district or in your community, in your school district, they have someone who has one. So I would just say, do your research to see who has the after school program and then connect with them.
Yeah, it speaks to the importance of those relationships. So thank you all. I think we can just, clip this piece of advice portion of the webinar and send it out, and people will have a lot of really good steps forward. So thank you so much. Really appreciate all of your time. I hope people got a lot of really good information about this or out of this webinar. And I'm going to invite Kate back just to close this out for today. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dorothy, and thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your expertise today. I know I learned a lot today, and am really excited to continue to share this out with people who maybe weren't able to join today. A couple things that I want to share with you all before we wrap up. The Partnership for Student Success offers or runs a number of communities that really work to foster peer-to-peer collaboration among practitioners in the field of education, youth development, and national service. They're all free to join. If you are a district leader, district level practitioner, if you work for an out-of-school time nonprofit or other youth-serving nonprofit, or even a higher ed institution that works to create partnerships with K-12, encourage you to check out the different networks that you see on my screen here. For us, we've seen a lot of positive impact from bringing people together who are doing similar work, either across sectors, whether that's K-12, higher ed, youth development, or people who are in the same sector, but maybe sort of working on their own, on their own island in one community, who don't have peers to connect with about promising practices, about strategies they've used to overcome tough challenges that we know exist. So really encourage you to check these out if they are of interest and if you have capacity. And with that, that concludes our webinar. I really want to thank everybody for joining us today. And again, want to thank our panelists for sharing your expertise. Really, really excited to have learned more about this important topic, and hope that it's helpful for everyone who was able to attend. Have a great afternoon.